And as we hit the midnight hour here in the East, the NBC News now making a projection in the state of Hawaii that Kamala Harris will win those 4 electoral votes in Hawaii. That's the only poll closing at the midnight hour here. The road to 270, Harris now with 189, Donald Trump still leading with 230 electoral votes.
All right, we've got quite a few battlegrounds still pending tonight. Pennsylvania, the biggest prize, 84% of the vote in. It is too close to call. In Wisconsin, same story. Here we go. 75% of the vote in, a difference of 87,000 votes. Michigan, too close to call at this hour as well. Midnight on the East Coast. 15 votes up for grabs. They're too close. Arizona, too early to call. Just been counting for about 3 hours now. Out west in Nevada, also too early to call. And in Minnesota, we have too close to call. Democrats still feeling very good about their prospects there, but the margins are not at a place where we are ready to call that. Georgia, too close to call at this hour, too. We just discussed that. So that might be a ray of light for Kamala Harris, or perhaps a very a narrowing of her path to victory. We should mention, Tom, we have called North Carolina. That was the first battleground to call, and it stays in the red column for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I want to go through Pennsylvania now because we're starting to get more vote in Pennsylvania, and I want to focus on the east side of Pennsylvania here. This is 2024 right now. Look, a lot of the vote is still out, but let me show you 2020. You can see how much of this section was blue in 2020. Again, Biden won these counties. Now this is 2024. He's flipping counties like Monroe. Again, it's about a 200 vote difference there, so we can't really put too much in that, but he's ahead. Northampton County, remember, this is the one that has picked the president, or at least picked the winner of Pennsylvania, going back to the Kennedy years. This is Easton. This is a fast-growing area, suburbs. It used to be the people that used to work at Bethlehem Steel. It's now changing. Again, fast-growing suburbs in south-central Pennsylvania. 52%, he's on top. Again, a reminder here, this is a county that Biden won in 2020. And this is new right now. This is Bucks County. 56% in. Still a lot of the vote is out. There's only about a 400 vote difference there. We're still waiting on 183,000 votes. So Republicans can't really draw too much out of this. But Democrats would rather these counties were all blue. Let's move a little further south around the collar counties of Philadelphia here. Montgomery County, this is where Governor Shapiro is from, 61%. Performing slightly under Joe Biden, but not too bad. Chester County, 58 to 54. That's a bigger gap there. Again, remember, Joe Biden wins Pennsylvania because he does better than Hillary Clinton in those suburbs around Philadelphia. And let's take a look at Philadelphia right now. Okay, 81 for Biden, 77 for Kamala Harris. There's still about 30% of the vote is out. But again, these aren't the trend lines that Democrats are going to want to see. Look, it could all change when that vote comes in. This is where we are right now. This is a snapshot in time. It could all change. Erie County is another swing county that we're watching. About 75% of the vote is in. She's overperforming Biden there. That's a good sign for her, especially in Western PA, where Democrats knew they were going to have some trouble because of the issue of fracking. And let's look at Allegheny County real quick. This is Pittsburgh. 94% of the vote is in, and she's about at the same mark where Biden is. That's where we stand right now, guys, in Pennsylvania.
How about Wisconsin? Can you do Door County? Because as you well know, fun fact alert, Door County has, do you like the fun fact alert? It's picked the president in the last 6 elections.
Yeah, so right now, if that's what you're betting on, Door County is blue. Democrats are on top there. But look, guys, this is a very small number. Door County is not a big county, but it's one that all the political watchers look at because it usually picks the winner almost always of the statewide race in Wisconsin. Right now, it's blue. That's a great sign for Democrats. I'm going to look at another one, like I mentioned, Sauk County. This is another one that usually picks the winner. Trump is on top here. Biden won it in 2020, so he's really overperforming, going from 48 to 52. But again, there's still about 30% of the vote that's out there. So we got to wait and see. The big ones we're watching in Wisconsin, as you know, Savannah, Dane County, University of Wisconsin here, the fastest growing area of the state. 75%. She's slightly underperforming there. Again, she has to turn out in these cities because, like the other battleground states, I should say, unlike the other battleground states, there are not large minority groups in Wisconsin. It's the widest of all the battleground states. And then Milwaukee, again, we're going to wait till late to get all the vote in Milwaukee. She's at 66%. 4 years ago, Joe Biden won Milwaukee, and he won the state of Wisconsin with 69%. She's going to have to turn up that vote and hope her voters show up. Guys?
Yeah. We got a lot of vote to count there, though, in Wisconsin.
You could call it the battle of the bellwethers, if that's what you're looking at here. I also think Bucks County, I will take my Bucks County native privilege as somebody who grew up there. It's an interesting one because you've got lower Bucks, central Bucks, upper Bucks, and it looks different in some of those
Starbucks?
areas. You also have
Sorry, it's
Starbucks.
after midnight. It happens.
Here it comes. M&Ms. I love it.
I know.
Get the M&Ms ready, too.
Yes.
But it looks different than like Montgomery County, Delaware County demographically here. And I was in touch with a good Republican source there who thinks that Donald Trump is going to do better. And we're starting to see it in some of these numbers in Bucks than he did in 2020. That said, remember, this was a +4 county for Joe Biden back in 2020. It is represented by a Republican in Congress. So it's one of these places very, very swingy and a place that a lot of folks are watching. And I see you nodding your head, Jen.
Yeah, well, I did not grow up in Bucks County, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about Bucks County over the course of many years in politics. You know, looking at county, as Tom was going through it, one of the things that we're seeing over and over again is that she's underperforming where Biden was in 2020. It doesn't mean that's where Biden would have performed, where he's still the nominee, but it does, and that's not just in Pennsylvania, where you're seeing it in Wisconsin, you're seeing it in other places. One of the things, as we've watched this results, that I've been thinking about that Democrats will have to think about, depending on what happens here, is there's been a realignment of states Democrats focus on. And, you know, Georgia and North Carolina are in many ways like baby blue. And I mean that because they've only been blue for one cycle, right? So they've done that because of organizing on the ground, but they're not reliably blue. And the problem is Ohio and Florida are gone.
Well, in the case of North Carolina, it was baby blue in 2008 and not since.
It hasn't been since. So that's, I don't know what color it is. It's lavender. So, yes, exactly. So I think one of the things that they will need to think about, regardless of the outcome, is where the states are that they're going to play. They would love to have Texas, of course. Texas didn't turn out for them to work out. Maybe it wouldn't for 8 years. But with states off the map, it's like, is it Georgia and North Carolina? Are there places they need to invest? That's one of the challenges, too, I think.
I'm getting an increasing number of texts from Democratic sources who are looking at these returns come in, the fact that she's not meeting her benchmarks in these various counties where she needs to, who are really starting to take that reflective tone of Democrats and thinking about the next election cycle need to think about how to better meet voters where they are. Again, we still have a lot of vote to come in. We still have to see what happens with the blue wall. But the fact that this is such a fight for them, the fact that this is a tied race, it's also taking a step back. Voters saying so far, at least, they like Trump.
Well, it's so interesting, too, because I remember in our earlier days in politics, after Republicans lost to Barack Obama, there was the famous autopsy commissioned by the head of the RNC that said and gave some tough love to Republicans, saying, listen, this country is changing demographically. And if you don't get a piece of that pie, you're going nowhere. Well, how interesting that we actually are seeing tonight Donald Trump getting more of the Latino vote. We'll see if he, got a better share of the black vote. I don't think we've seen that in the exit polls yet, but you're starting to see that.
Yeah, that is true. And I also, though, will say it wasn't a policy campaign. Right? There weren't policy proposals that were dueling. To me, it seems much more cultural, what you're seeing.
Well, isn't that the note for Democrats?
That is a harder thing to grapple with. That's my point. It takes a lot of deep soul searching. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. But if you look again to the breakdown, college versus non-college educated, rural versus urban, those are big cultural issues that are beyond whether somebody has an 81-page economic plan or what their other plan is. And that's a different conversation.
I disagree with you a little bit, Jen, on that.
All right,
I do think
level of disagreement. Go ahead.
I do think there was policy, but it was more around the record. So, I mean, Donald Trump was running as the incumbent president without being the incumbent president. He was running on his record, primarily prior to COVID, and reminding people, whether it was on the immigration, the economy. I mean, I remember when I was on the 2020 campaign, prior to the pandemic, I think we were down for a Democrat debate in Atlanta, and an African-American gentleman came up to me and, looked around and said, I like your guy because everybody's got work and our paychecks are going up. Now, COVID scrambled everything. But I think a lot of people, especially in those communities that are moving over, they're doing it based off of, well, I remember whether it was the border was secure, the economy was better, prices were lower under Donald Trump. So it was an incumbent campaign without being the incumbent.
With the benefit of 4 years, and people do it right. Yeah.
It's a bit of a revision. We don't have to argue about this now.
There's
other things, but it's a bit of a revisionist. It is a revisionist. So to me, that still is a messaging, cultural thing, and not actually a policy debate.
Okay, I'll give you that part of it.
Lightly dispute.
All right. Well, Garrett Haake is at Trump Election Night headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. How's it going there, Garrett?
Lester, there is sort of a barely contained sense that the party is really going to get started here at any moment at this Trump election headquarters. Every time a new result is announced on screen behind me, there are huge cheers from a crowd that has been filing in here, drinking beer, wine, and cocktails for some time now and is ready to celebrate. And I'll just say, anecdotally, it is a younger crowd. It is a younger crowd than other election nights I've covered, other Republican events that I've covered. And I think it reflects something that we've seen in the exit polls, this so-called shift of the bro vote in particular towards Donald Trump, the young men who he has put so central in this campaign. You know, I think about the fact that just today when he was voting, he was asked by another reporter about what he thought one of the most important moments of this campaign was, and he mentioned Joe Rogan, the podcaster, and the fact that he did that podcast interview and then subsequently got Rogan's endorsement, which he made a big part of his closing remarks just last night. Feels like a week ago now. Trump is talking to a different segment of America and has created a different electorate for Republicans than has existed in any other Republican race that I've covered. It's reflected in this room. I think we're seeing it reflected in the states he's putting together, just as you guys were just discussing about kind of what states are in play, what the map is going to look like now, and potentially for cycles in the future.
All right, Garrett, thank you. I want to go over to Peter Alexander, your counterpart over at Kamala Harris headquarters in Washington, D.C. So what is the mood there?
Well, you can hear the music blaring, but within the crowd right now, it's pretty silent. A lot of glum looks on the faces here over the course of this evening. They've been playing as the returns were coming in on one of the cable channels, and frankly, they weren't the returns that most of the people here in the room wanted. So you start hearing several dozen people start chanting, "Music, music." They muted the TV and blasted some music so they could sort of lift the spirits of some of the folks here this evening. I'll tell you, based on an attendee who was at one of the Harris events taking place at a hotel not far from here, the situation there, the scene was described as that of a funeral right now. Now, that doesn't mean this thing is over, but it does give you a sense of the way people are feeling right now. I was with Kamala Harris just yesterday as she was traveling through Pennsylvania at that late night event. Actually, it was just 24 hours ago that she was with Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, Oprah Winfrey, and she said to the tens of thousands gathered that momentum is on our side, but clearly there was a different message being communicated now in the form of that document that was obtained by NBC News, the statement sent by the campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, saying basically that we always knew this race was going to be tight, and increasingly it appears that they believe the blue wall states are their best path going forward at this time. That's what it seems to be the way this night is going to go for most folks here. It's not the end of the road. Jen O'Malley Dillon also saying we're going to keep at it tomorrow, but we wait to hear from Kamala Harris, of course, in the course of the next couple of hours. We'll let you know.
Jen, how important are notes like that, not for our consumption, but for the consumption of the campaign?
Hugely important. I think people forget. I've been on winning presidential campaigns and losing ones. It feels better when you win, just to state the obvious. But,
I agree.
You know, there we go. We can agree. But, you know, this is a team that has been, many of them through a massive transition just 107 days ago, where many of them signed up to work for somebody slightly different, and Joe Biden. You know, it's been... They've been working 20 hours a day. They've been eating bad pizza, drinking bad beer, all of the things. And it's just to keep them rolling,
but at a
keep
moment
them
like
going.
This, but a moment like this, now we know earlier in the evening they were trying to keep them in line and all this, but now you're at a point where you have no control.
You don't, but you need to keep the campaign team's spirits up, because they're continuing to talk to voters and counsel people who may have questions. And they're still a part of this big team that's been working to elect Kamala Harris. They don't have control, but the end has not happened yet. And so they need to keep them all, their spirits up. That's the goal.
You say the end hasn't happened yet. I mean, do you still hold out hope that there's a path? I mean, a reasonable path?
Well, look, I think it becomes, as I said earlier, more and more challenging as more results come in and you see that the blue wall looks like the primary possible path, and as you see her underperforming Biden in a number of these counties, that makes it more challenging. Now, there are still, if you talk to Democrats, which I have, they believe there are votes that are still coming in Philadelphia. There are still votes coming in cities. That's often how these nights go. So I'm a believer you got to wait until you know. That's what happens internally here as well. But yes, if you're on the campaign right now, you're feeling pretty down because there are places you wanted to have in your win column to give you more space and breathing room, and you don't have them in this moment.
As we talk about this idea of the Democratic brand, Jen, and as you've been having this conversation here, I just want to throw out a data point to the table here, because there is a ballot initiative that has just passed in a state that enshrines a right to paid sick leave and a higher minimum wage, and it passed with 59% support. If I were to say that, maybe you'd say blue state, probably, right?
California, right?
Missouri, right? A state that we called almost right away for former President Trump here, which I think speaks to what you're getting at here, this idea of a realignment in this moment. You've talked about it. Chuck's talked about it. We've had that conversation here at the table.
I also think Hallie had the opportunity to interview Vice President Kamala Harris, and you asked her a fascinating question. Do you think the country is ready for a black woman president? And she said yes. And depending on how this night goes, I think that will be one of the questions that gets asked as well.
This is the piece that, and again, we don't know what the outcome is yet. But I think when Hillary Clinton lost, a lot of people felt like, a lot of women, a lot of Democrats felt like there's never going to be a woman in my lifetime, right? And I think one of the things that is going to be a challenge if Harris loses is that there will be Democrats who will not want to take a risk on a woman, on someone who's diverse, because they'll think, I like that person, but the country's not ready. Here's the thing. The country's not ready until the country is ready with Barack Obama. Yeah. There's a range of factors that lead to the win or loss of anyone, and we don't know what's happened yet, that will all have to be delved into, but I do worry about that if she loses.
We do know it is something that she leaned out of in her campaign, unlike Hillary Clinton in 2016. It was not something that she didn't open her stump speeches with that idea. I mean, she talks about it, and she talked about it with me. She's talked about it with all of you here, too, that it would be the president for all Americans, and that she is sort of putting her head down and grinding it out.
But if she loses, it won't be because women didn't turn out. It won't be because of women, right? It won't be because she pulled back a lot of the Democratic base that had gone away and were, double haters, as we called them for a long time, before there was a switch at the top of the ticket. And that is actually how Barack Obama also ran and won, which he didn't lead with the historic nature of his candidacy on his sleeve. There will be a lot of people who second guess that if she loses.
But if she loses, it may also be because there are tremendous headwinds in terms of an unpopular incumbent and people feeling terrible about the economy. And even if inflation is down to 2%, sometimes the stuff you feel, your gas prices, your groceries, it doesn't feel that way. So that may also be the rationale.
That's exactly my point I was trying to make earlier, and you just did it in a more articulate way, which is that, there will be there are always leaps to conclusion in both parties when your candidate loses, or if they lose. And again, we don't know yet, but and people will leap to different ones, right? The country isn't ready for a woman. The country isn't ready for a black woman, all of these things. But there are a lot of factors that play into the win or loss. And I think if she loses, I'm hopeful people will look at the broad scope of where the country is, the cultural divides, the rural-urban divides.
The education divides.
The education divides. There are just a lot of factors at play in presidential races.
I'll give you something that may be positive for you going forward. Should this all end the way we were talking, that's a possibility. You still have a very young, good bench in Governor Shapiro, the governor of North Carolina, the Gretchen Whitmer, who could possibly bridge that gap, and as opposed to saddling them with the L, if they would have joined the ticket with the vice president, or if they had replaced the vice president and become the nominee with 100 and some days out in a very difficult situation, I think you would have been weaker as a party for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think that if she loses and Donald Trump wins, there will be millions of people in this country who voted for her who will feel like we're in the state of an emergency. And I think that is how people will respond and feel. And they will be looking for hope, a resistance, an opposition. And there are a lot of people in the Democratic bench. You mentioned some of them were in the beef steaks we all, lived through this summer. Some of them were not, who I would expect would all be out there on everybody's shows in the coming days.
Well, and that's what makes the timing, I think, of President Biden's decision to step down after the debate something that, if she does in fact lose, will be under a microscope, because, of course, there was so much discussion, even over the summer, about potentially having an open primary and having that fight play out within the Democratic Party. So I think it's one of the big questions moving forward.
And you mentioned debate. We haven't really talked about that. There was no second debate. And, and you have to wonder how that affected the trajectory of this race, because by most accounts, he didn't perform well in his first debate with Harris.
True. And I also think that it throws into question a lot of things. I mean, I think anybody who watched that debate objectively felt she outperformed him in that debate. If she doesn't win, yes, there should have been a second debate, but do debates matter? They should matter. They're the public being able to see the candidates. She has a far superior ground operation that has been invested in across the country. The Republican state parties, you can disagree with me here, of course, are falling apart in many states in the country. That will throw into question, does that matter? It should matter, but it will throw that into question. So, yes, not a second debate, not an opportunity for people to see them person to person. The first one definitely benefited her, but if she doesn't win, it didn't benefit her enough to put her in the White House.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. We're still waiting on a lot of numbers from the battleground states and the road to 270. We'll be right back after this break.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.